Tenzin Dorjee Geshe Tenzin Sanghanje Chedama Soje Chonamol Sancho Pardo Dan Shabsun Lage Jege Jebe Sonam Dona Beshe Sanje Dobara Sanghanje Chedama Soje Chonamol Sancho Pardo Dan Shabsun Lage Jege Jebe Sonam Dona Beshe Sanje Dobara Sanghanje Chedam Soje Chonam Sanjo Bando Dan Shabsun Dage Chugur Jebe Sonam Dona Pesha Sanje Dobarasho Ola Zumajuna Gitadani Bisinji Tamji Tendo Tojalana Me Bayanda Bazobe Sanji Chikumbara Mujikini Tobrashago Tobrashavi Cheto Tambe Cherum Bujisenia Bekono Shanju Semchi Zia Simbekon Sambrishu.
Let us cultivate the altruistic motivation seeking complete enlightenment for the sake of liberating infinite, kind, mother sentient beings. With that kind of altruistic motivation, that we should all participate in this teaching.
Toja Sanji Kumparam Kitan the Yore, the Carrington the Yore, Ranta Yen, and a Dingy Valetoni, Sanji Kumparam Toya Chedo, and I'll do your was.
I believe that all of us are seeking Buddhahood or complete enlightenment as our ultimate spiritual goal. And we are seeking that goal in order to benefit both ourselves as well as other sentient beings. And in order to realize that goal, it is essential for us to get rid of the two types of mental obscuration to liberation, simply called delusions, and obscuration to omniscient wisdom.
So in order
to get rid of or abandon the two types of mental obscuration to liberation and obscuration to omniscient state, it's not just enough to make good aspirational prayers and dedication and recite mantras. What is essential is to collect the two types of accumulation of merit and accumulation of insight or wisdom. It is through these two types of accumulation that we are able to counteract and get rid of the two types of mental obscuration within our own mind. And what is essential for the accumulations of merit and wisdom, if you ask, is to cultivate the altruistic mind of enlightenment, or what we call Changju or bodhicitta. So we need to find the methods or the practice which enables us to cultivate the altruistic mind of enlightenment within ourselves. Of the two types of mental obscuration, the one which is, if you will, much harder to get rid of is the obscuration to omniscient wisdom. We call shedip, obscuration to knowledge, if you will. And for that, what really we need is to combine the bodhicitta or altruistic mind of enlightenment with the wisdom realizing emptiness as it is, the ultimate nature of all phenomena. It is that integrated practice of bodhicitta and wisdom that helps us to get rid of from within our mind the obscuration to omniscient wisdom.
Ramesung talk ngo zugsan ba gare shna ta ale cholam ne do zu de de ba jin bi cholam zu go che za de ba jin bi cholam rang ju li she ba la ta shang ju chen ro bo ji an rang ju she go go ya shang ju chen ro bo ji rang ju she ba ta de ba jin bi lam ta thoma hyu ba de ta dinim cha go.
We often talk about the need to accumulate wisdom and merit for three great countless eons. And where does it all begin, if you ask? It all begins, on the path of accumulation of the greater vehicle Buddhism or Mahayana. And how do we get there? The way we get there is when we cultivate the altruistic mind of enlightenment or bodhicitta within our mind. When we have bodhicitta in us, this is where we enter initially into the path of accumulation of Mahayana Buddhism, and from then onward begins, if you will, the accumulations of merit and wisdom for three great countless eons.
So how
can we have bodhicitta inside out? What goes before that or comes before that, if you ask? We must cultivate what is known as, literally translating special thought, satsam in Tibetan. What it is actually is the willpower. We need to cultivate the sense of responsibility, to carry upon our own shoulders in order to benefit all other sentient beings. So that kind of, if you might call, universal sense of responsibility is that which comes before we have bodhicitta. So how could we have that sense of universal responsibility that I'm going to take on my shoulders the responsibility to benefit all other sentient beings? And what comes before that, or from where that kind of sense of universal responsibility comes about, is from great compassion. So therefore, what precedes that universal sense of responsibility is cultivating great compassion or Mahakaruna. Of course, we need to, study about and put into practice the methods or the means by which we can cultivate great compassion. And what is involved in that is we really need to understand what is great compassion.
So that ninji tang ninji cheme tang ninji chimbo ni chabad alingwen sheki wa shegures.
In other words, that we need to be able to differentiate between great compassion and immeasurable compassion.
So that ninji cheme se ate ni senji shedaba ta senji shedaba cheme bala ta mi wa yin ya te ya ninji chimbo chagar karesna ninji chimbo ko mi de senji tamki ani senji thagil mi go ya so that ninji cheme de senji shedaba cheme bala jil mi ba yin ya ko senji thagil mi go ya so that kunyi ki chabate da hyuche ninji hyuche chagun do was.
So you ask, what is the difference between great compassion and immeasurable compassion? Immeasurable compassion, which in Tibetan is called tseme, nyingti tseme, it is a compassion that is directed at innumerable number of sentient beings. But it does not include each and every sentient being within its focus. In contrast, great compassion, it takes every sentient being into account. Nobody is there to be left out. So great compassion is an all-inclusive compassion that is focused on each and every sentient being, as a matter of fact, all sentient beings. So that's the difference between the two types of compassion, immeasurable compassion and great compassion.
So that mi wa senje thangkel mini ta number de dunghe tandochi naba chiri ta shamba kharse hi chemel ya na number de dunghe tandochi naba even dogya taina mi be gon chabja.
So when we talk about compassion, whether it is immeasurable compassion or great compassion, we need to consider two aspects or dimensions of each compassion. Number one, what is its focus or object, nikpa, and what is its subjective aspect. In terms of subjective aspect, both immeasurable compassion and great compassion are just the same, because its subjective aspect is wishing other sentient beings to be free from suffering. That is its subjective aspect we call number. So we may not find difference in terms of that subjective aspect between the two types of compassion. But we do find the difference between the two types of compassion in terms of their focus or objects. Immeasurable compassion is focused on innumerable number of sentient beings. Maybe the number is great, that we are not able to count it. Nonetheless, it does not include each and every sentient being, whereas great compassion focuses on all. The word all is underlined, sentient beings. Okay, now if that's what great compassion is, then what goes before great compassion? What really goes before great compassion is what we call cultivating great love, or mahametri.
So that Shamba Chimbaranjil Shevina, Ani Tapenum Dixna, Maranso, any socio any Caseta, losing the Pame and Bugel Sevachimbuchi Yabina, Perse, that's Shamba, Ani Devo the Kibo Yakatanic Samba, Shukchimbuchi Yabina, that Rangi in it up Pujile, doing this entitled Zalame Chang was. Kare is Noko, tell it say it's Shamba. 다 내부터 기본이야지 그거 제가 때리 도아대 농이 차이는 전에 때리 농이 때리 잔되겠다 로케지 뭐 시행도 와 기본이다.
So if you are wondering how does great love leads to great compassion, what is the connection between these two attitudes? Let me give you an example of very loving parents who care so much for their children that they love their children so much that they sacrifices a lot for their children. When their children have any problem or suffering, these loving parents are not able to bear that, to see that suffering, and so they really wish their children to be out of trouble or problem as soon as possible, and they want to think about what can I do to help them do that. So that's how you see the love and compassion are connected in some way.
sometimes 다 생계는 뭐 상바당 인지시와데 시 투브 샤고 다 개치면 쉬고 그래서 장지 세는 버전은 이제 샤발라 빙임부터 나가도 뭐는 저딱 휴 잡고지 아 때문에 로고 sometimes 상바당 인지 다 가르쳐 그러대 생계는 뭐 상바당 인지부터 개치면 쉬고
So great love, just like great compassion, it focuses on all, underlined all sentient beings. And it wishes all beings to be happy. And it is, absolutely necessary for us to cultivate great love and great compassion before we could experience or have bodhicitta or the altruistic mind of enlightenment. It's in this regard we have to, follow the methods or the practices to cultivate as intensively as we can great love and great compassion, which will lead to the experience of bodhicitta.
다 때문에 다 나란주 처말로 생계는 미비 아니 그냥 아니 상바지 시야겠다 답셔버리.
So we all need to find ways first to cultivate great love for all sentient beings.
손자다 근데 있나 생계는 네베 릭티 파 네베 시야겠다 로드파 다 추르 땅이 좀 약속고 그래서.
So how can we cultivate great love for all sentient beings? As a part of the process of mental development, we need to, decrease any harmful thought and intention that we have towards other sentient beings.
sometimes ranke lote any see tamji deboda kiboye je santang ina ta kol never see lutanga ta ike and never see ta sanute yungu marabas.
So if we really truly cultivate great love for all sentient beings, that means we really truly wish all beings to be happy or find happiness that they are seeking, then how could we think of harming them either physically, verbally, and mentally? In other words, there is no space in the great love for the harmful intention because it doesn't work. If you love sentient beings so much, dearly, how could we ever think of? There is no space in the mind to think of harming others through our actions of body, speech, and mind.
Rang any single nebe, Lutanga, Iki, any that Miguel Leki, Sabro Chekiduna, P. Gablani, Rang single thing may be Shamba Gomba the temperature.
So as a part of training our mind, if somehow we started to feel a sense or think that of harming others, then we should right away try to bring to our mind our goal, if you will, to cultivate great love for all sentient beings.
아니 냠노 줄리시야 그다 타비시고요. 손자다 쇼티니 애니게 생길라 아니 네베 아니 룽아크 샤워 가리시 룽아크 샤워 이 샤베이나 다티다 베 장게 로군도 삼테티 하코베시 하코베자마지타 생길라 네베 리트 아니 방고요 야고요.
So we need to remind ourselves, if any harmful thought or idea comes up in the mind, we have to remind ourselves that I have decided to cultivate, love for all sentient beings. And I really want to wish everybody to be happy. So therefore, this thought that starts to arise in me to harm others is really contradicting what I want to do or I have decided to do for sentient beings. So not only that, we recognize the inconsistency between cultivating love and, intending to harm others, but we also, should try to follow it in practice in the sense that we should abandon a harmful thought. So when we cultivate love, of course, it is a process we have to go through. Even if we don't have great love at the moment for sentient beings, just because we are cultivating love for sentient beings, I think the power of the love is such that, for example, we will not become jealous of others.
손자 나란서 샴바 gond이잖아. 생제단지 대화다 내나 깨우나 덴버지기 덴버 다기 샤오스마 다 텐디기 고고여 봐스.
So when we cultivate love, what we are really thinking through is how nice it would be if sentient beings, have happiness or find happiness. May they be able to find happiness, and may I be able to, help sentient beings find happiness. So these are the mental processes involved in cultivating love for sentient beings.
Tenda sonza senti ranli kimbe senti yele. Dai ane pyusu zoba kandeji shomba yene. Tele hakba shonda sambe samba jin shegu garmato tele chadu shie da samba yungu marwas.
So what is involved, in those mental processes in cultivating love is that when others are really doing well, they are successful in what they do, they have prosperity, they have happiness, we cannot, feel jealous of them. Rather we should be wishing them more happiness or more success. We're really happy to see that others are succeeding in what they're doing, or they're finding what they want, but we wish them all the more to have, the best of success and prosperity. Of course, before we have the real great love, for sentient beings, as we started to cultivate love for sentient beings, I think the power of love is such that we experience positive changes within ourselves, such as the one I just mentioned. We don't become jealous of others when they are really doing well, but we appreciate it all the more, and we wish them even more, prosperity and success.
And this Sinji Tamji, doing it on the camera, Tower Dag show, starting this somebody Google of us.
Now, as we cultivate great compassion for others, we go through these mental processes. How nice it would be if sentient beings are free from, suffering and pain. May sentient beings be freed from suffering and pain. May I be able to help sentient beings to be free from suffering and pain.
Sonta, that ranki, senti yen, mushu jusumni. 아니 등에 용이 다 싸웠대 지나면도 다 주시 주야 말했어.
So as we cultivate great compassion through such mental processes, of course, there's no way, we want to bring harm to sentient beings either directly or indirectly.
So because in the sense because 가령에서 소소의 세계 탐지 랑 다인지 아니 동해리 탐되게 로시게로 손자 콘솔의 등의 요약에 랑게 시주야 말했어.
Because as Geshe was starting to speak English and then he realized he got a translator at other end of the line, and so because when we wish others to be free from suffering, that is our goal and wish as we cultivate great compassion. So how can we bring suffering or harm to others? Because that doesn't seem to sit right.
I don't need translator. Because without translator, I cannot give actually meaning of the Dharma to you. So anyway, the next answer, when Sejitang Dungi Rang any Lutang Ata Yisumji, any Seji Yenate Dungi Noyake Juzoja Maris.
So in other words, what I'm saying here is as we cultivate great compassion for others, we should see that our actions of body, speech, and mind do not cause harm to others.
Then did you do Taduni, Shambata Hinges, someone like that, Mamaki to have Kalkager, Pena Shambata Hingi. Some Satan, I think Tibetan, the Turkey resta, Tibetan, Turkey of Shambata Hingi, Lassam, and the Shanji same Tony to be here, say, Tundu, someone like that, Naranzo Gobi Yoji, and a Zo Chagers.
So these things which I have been trying to, explain, universal sense of responsibility or special thought, great compassion, great love, these terms, if you will, have become so widespread in the Mahayana, Buddhism and among Mahayana practitioners that these things in some way comes quite easily on our lips. We are very fond of using these language of the terms like great love, great compassion, universal sense of responsibility. But these are the things really which are, if you will, constitute essential cores of Mahayana practice.
That really can't be seen to Chamalo. And top of the tension become Toyaka. What
we really need to recognize is this, that other sentient beings play a very significant role in our achievement of liberation and enlightenment. As a matter of fact, they are, they constitute, if you will, the basis for our practice, to find liberation and enlightenment. Do you see the point that I'm trying to make here? How do sentient beings become the basis of our practice? Let me give an example here. We all know how important land is for our survival. Almost everything we eat, it is dependent on the land. All the vegetations grow in the soil of the land, all the forests that we need. And so land is the basis of our life in that sense. Without the land or the soil, we cannot survive.
사기 들이 개념이 차가 또 나기게 아니 세계 탐지 랑줄라 얘네 연대시 다시 대공 그릇이야 다 이게 차고 그랬어 랑 디바 파파야다 거버츠 드레야게 다 이게 생긴 때니 용거야레스 생기 참말로다 랑 대공 그릇이야 이게 차고 그랬어 사기 나이 차고 그랬어.
So as important as soil or land is for our survival, we are very much dependent on it for our survival. All the foods come from land, all the other materials we use in our life. In the same way, sentient beings constitute like that land for our spiritual practice. Because when we think of practice, what really our practice involves is to refrain from negative and destructive actions or abandon them. And how do we do that? In relation to other sentient beings. So they become very important for our practice. We need to do positive actions or do the right things. And how do we do that? In relation to other sentient beings. So our practice of abandonment and cultivation, could be done only with reference to other sentient beings. So they really become very important for our practice.
Tenda sonta yehilar thambake lojung tsigimake nana no sunwa. Dan senje thamjine yinobile lapi. Tencho drobe samba itat kibran zebak. Senje chamalo da kibran zin ran lakbe kibran zingo res. Zingo ya karesana rang tenda cho tawada tanjebe gomba droyalta. 다 된주 맨날 물어마지 세계인 맨날 물어마지 송자 다 이게 노벨에 하거든요.
So it is for such reasons great Kadampa Geshe Langritangpa in his famous 8 verses mind training Lojong Tsigye mind Tibetan writes, as Geshe quoted the powerful stanza from his memory, may I be able to see other sentient beings as more precious than a wish-fulfilling gem. By understanding that, I'm able to fulfill the greatest purpose of life, in that way. And with that understanding, may I be able to cherish sentient beings day in and day out. So what really basically the Geshe Langritangpa is saying to us is that in order to find the greatest purpose of life, to find liberation and enlightenment, sentient beings are very important to us. And in that regard, sentient beings are more precious and important than a wish-fulfilling gem or a jewel. And with that kind of a knowledge and understanding and recognition, that we should learn to cherish other sentient beings, all the time.
No. Soncha, that and soncha ngaran namju, that's just so nal didusane, senki yela, nye kwesian of the meratayanta, the hana yiki criticize yan of that and they done mavisheni, dana jungre.
So how does all that connect to our everyday living and practice, if you wonder? Well, we are living with and among sentient beings. So we should watch out our actions of, body, speech, and mind. We should see that we do not belittle others or criticize others negatively. We do not look down upon others. We do not mistreat others. You see, because the sentient beings are precious.
다 전대신이 뜻송도 왔어. 이제 시험 초주야 말이지. 시험 전에 랑시션 초고 그랬어. 랑시션이 르버션이 방국이어. 손자 이제 시험 초주야 말이야. 이제 시험 잡이나 이제는 시험 매나야. 이 고대 더 랑 샘그 마릉바티 토네 이 향이 줘야 돼. 진짜 이제 시험 초주야 말 랑시션이 초지. 대 다네. As great, lineage masters tell us that we should not try to find faults in other people and sentient beings. Rather, we should try to find out our own weaknesses and faults. Why? Because if we find our own faults,
then we are able to get rid of them, because we want to get rid of our weaknesses and faults. So in order to do that, we need to be able to figure out what faults do we have. But we should not try to find fault in others, because others may sometimes not have the faults that we perceive in them. It could be just our own mental projection onto them. So when we have a negative state of mind to find faults in others may not need any faults, because we will just give them faults, attribute faults to them, and then we see them back, our own projections. And so then there is the problem. So once again, I just want to say that I've taken a bit of a time to explain these matters before going back to the text where we left off last time. And I do this often because, for some of you, this might not be new information per se, but this certainly is a good reminder to you and to me, what we should be thinking about and put into practice. But for some of you, it might be new information, in which case you are learning something new, and so that you can put this into practice. So just to summarize what I have spoken this morning, the bottom line is this. We need to find complete enlightenment or Buddhahood for our own sake and for the sake of all other sentient beings. In order to realize this goal, we must get rid of the two types of mental obscuration to liberation and obscuration to omniscient wisdom. And how can we do that? We need to practice the two types of accumulation of merit and accumulation of wisdom. And what is needed for those two types of accumulation is the experience of bodhicitta. How could we have bodhicitta? We need to cultivate a universal sense of responsibility or special willpower. We need to cultivate great compassion. We need to cultivate great love.
Honest. That causing it something those in bus. Yami Joji anima sungsate gobo himbar. That the red showing machine. And that Mawa Mandusi Makana get to Samalo. Nurse Kanasatita, those in the red Kabarad Shonta, Tavazin and Dakaina, red Shonta Kanam. Yinayata, Susi Rang Tani, and he has just opened the his Raju Mena, and Susi some of the Tamji, Nay Sugar San Congress.
So last week, we have witnessed a part of advice and instruction great Indian Master Adisha gave to Venerable Geshe Barba, among practitioners in solitude. And of course, he was addressing directly to Venerable Geshe Bar and how he should do the practice and what are the pitfalls. And this may be applicable to those, who are monastics directly, but for the rest of the people, who live in a society and who are not monks, I think there are still messages we can get out of this advice, and all that you should think about what is the message that I can take away from this as I live in society and in communities of lay people, and I will also try to bring out some of those things relevant to lay practitioners.
All right. That tambo de chamalu tigare. That Labja tambo de. Karesana de Sundova. Shirnas. Casing it Hutadina that take Judge Shirna. 시단 시기는 아니 힘이 뛴들 힘만가고 뛴데 가서 이게 규차를 힘만가고 뛴데나 민남치 세네 윤통스 단 힘만가고 뛴디 값을 믿는 적은 제 통통레스 아니 디톨 아니 해고야 해제 남바데 망보져 봤어 해제 남바 망웨스 아니 세장 좀 특별한 예반매베스 단념 난치링 예반매베 가는 거예요. 랑 세장 아니 가시 되지 의미들랑 예반이 말아봤어 매베스 다 가리 거르잖아 아니 뉴드스 저거 랑 아니 내가 당돌라는 매버 지키세 랑 내가 당돌라는 세 내가 가리잖아 다 줘줘야 아니 내가 지니 아니 라나 소수다 가와다 참배 아니 최 관리지 두고 상는데 내가도 뇌에다 다 당돌라니 너도 그래서 가나도
I always explained some of these lines last week, but I'm going to repeat myself here or recapitulate it in case some people have missed the idea or were not there last week. So these things apply to all of us, whether we are monastic or monks, practitioners or lay practitioners. This is what Atisha says. During this degenerated time, I already explained what does degeneration mean last time. Human lifespan is, relatively speaking, short. Now that applies to all of us. We are living during degenerated time, and our human lifespan is, generally speaking, short, relatively. However, the things to learn about, we call the objects of knowledge, are just, innumerable. There are too many things to learn. Life is short, too many things to learn. Additionally, our life has full of uncertainties, such as the uncertainty of the time of death. That's important to take into account. Life is short, but then we don't know when this is going to come to an end. But things to learn about are too many, So what should we do? Atisha says, we should try to grab hold of what we truly want to accomplish, meaning that, if we really care about and we want to do spiritual practice, whatever practice suits us, our dispositions, and we are able to handle it, we should take the opportunity to study and do that practice. Because life is short, we don't know when this life is going to come to an end, and there are too many things to learn about.
처음 답을 남릉는 시기는 다 용 좀 간대기네요. 처음 답에 거로 숨바도 정말로 다 즉 당보는 누군도와 세는 윤통 세는 윤통 해제 남바만서 해고야도 정말로 다 아니 거 힘이 된수는 유 뭐로도 송유지 바지 남도 정말로 다 아니 해제 남바 해제 남전지 sometimes 강대 남도.
So here, we get a sense of our own life situation, that our life is short. Now, if we have studied Lamrim, we can bring all those, Lamrim teachings here to, to widen our knowledge and perspective, how is a life short. Okay, and also the uncertainty of the time of the death. So basically, the teachings from Lamrim on impermanence of life, death and dying are very relevant here. Whereas the objects of knowledge are just innumerable things to learn about. In this case, what we're really talking about is when we think in terms of spiritual development, starting with the practice of cultivating proper relationship with qualified spiritual masters. That's a whole mouthful for a translator. In Tibetan, it's called, very simply, Guru devotion practice. But in the footnote, devotion sometimes throw some people off the word in English. Anyway, for simplicity's sake, let me use it. From starting with the Guru devotion practice, all the way to our ultimate spiritual goal, that is enlightenment, there are so many spiritual paths and grounds to progress on, and so many practices to do that. So therefore, there are just incredibly, many things to learn about and to put into practice.
That tamadili, that's a long yamaras. Rang deba tang the lang lam beper chis, rang deba tang the language carson, shebus and lam yonzota, around the church, don't get lang gograva, chesati, lam yonzo tangdos.
So we don't know when this short life is going to come to an end. So therefore, we should engage in as soon as possible in accomplishing what we really want to accomplish. Meaning that we should study about and put into practice what is known as the practices of 3 types of spiritual practitioners. In the footnote, initial level practice, intermediate level practice, and advanced level practice. How can we as an individual do all those practices?
So that socio any loda champion shibusum lamjambati ranjuli shevi tabla begu rest ali has a tambo de dos gogum was.
So the first advice that's given is that from the the spiritual landscape of the 3 types of practitioners and their practices, we should start it off where we find something is suitable to our own taste and dispositions and capacities, and then try to do that practice as soon as possible.
Hola, tal has a nimba directa. Presna yoje la sopes, yoje la soda na cardiovascular, tapena yoje is in Radusho ta galonda in Tsoe Jusumure. Attention and Radusho Yojete. Tati in Maritan, the Yojela Sopese, Tay Jena Naranzo, the social Koa Yojiki or one.
No.
At this, that Yoji Jusum about Google, that is Sumundo. Yojela Sope, Sosumki, Shawalas, Chimba and our Shenis. And in Agalon, Moki, Mamaki, Stelgio Americana. Socio and the 10 days showers and Lindo. 10 days shower de Jubalata Chimbali, Chimbanangi Shene. Chimbanangi Shene, and I think that Ganon is in Malusumata.
And then the next advice, that Adisha gives is this: do not call yourself a monk if you are worried about worldly activities as much as worldly people or lay people. In other words, that in the relevant literatures for monastic practitioners, for example, a monk would should be able to have what we call 13 different items, which are required to sustain the life and so forth. But other than that, should not be working as busy as lay people, or worrying about the life and worldly things as much as lay people, and then still claim I'm a monk. And Atija says, don't say that.
That sojourner, Yojela sojourner, the when a dandy nation said, Dandy John doing nation. Tapama Yavandoti, Chimbana is in Agano, is Malas that they could go.
And of course, the way it is expressed is, don't do such things and so forth, or etc. So within etc. is a package. The things couldn't be listed here because of the space limitation. And what we can then find in that is, as a monk practitioner or monastic practitioner, if one has the same attitudes, worldly attitudes like any lay people, lay people, in a conventional sense, maybe like they are so much caught up with, being attached to, their dear and near ones, the families and the friends and whatnot, and they are and into maybe getting upset or angry, with the people they call enemies, of my enemies and enemies of my friends and families, and then try to fight against them and protect family and friends from them. And then with regard to the strangers, they say like, okay, I don't care who they are. They don't concern me. They're neither my friends nor my enemies. So I don't care. So those may be certain, worldly attitudes, that a monk practitioner should not have. If a monk practitioner indulges in those attitudes, then it's no different from, regular lay people. So now what should the lay practitioners get out of this? Which seems to be like, Adisha is very directly addressing how a monk practitioner should think and should not think. So what can you lay people get out of this is this, yes, as lay practitioners, you don't have the monastic ordination involved, so you're not monk or nun. Okay, that's, quite clear. But if, as spiritual practitioners or Dhamma practitioners, one should regard the interest of just this lifetime, worldly interest this lifetime less important, and one should, think about the betterment of future lives much more important. And if you don't do that, then we could say don't call yourself Dhamma practitioners. If you're so much caught up with worldly life and activities, and less importance to Dharma, then we could say, that don't call oneself a Dhamma practitioner. So what Adisha directly addressed Venerable Geshe a monk practitioner, implicitly there is also a teaching or a message for all of us, all practitioners who are not monks and nuns, And what I just mentioned, that's what we should understand. As a Dharma practitioners, we should care more about spiritual interests and less about the worldly interests. Otherwise, don't call ourselves practitioners. So now, just as I said, that a monk practitioner, should not indulge in the worldly attitudes such as being get attached with the family and friends and try to protect them, and then get upset and angry and be negative about the enemies, and then try to defeat them, and then being indifferent to the strangers. Now, what can we get out of that message for the people who are not monks and nuns or practitioners? Is this that if, as a lay practitioner, one's attitudes, towards friends, families, and strangers are as, deluded as any other people, who have no interest in Dharma, if there's no such difference, then one should not call oneself a spiritual practitioner. In other words, that if one is as obsessively attached to friends and relatives like the, person who has no interest in Dharma, one is really, negative and deluded about, defeating and destroying enemies, thinking in that line as bad as, negatively as somebody who has no interest in Dharma, and one is completely indifferent to strangers, as indifferent as somebody who has no interest in Dharma, then do not call oneself a spiritual practitioner. So Adisha's, a lot of, in this particular section, message is directly addressed to a monk practitioner. But what I have just said is I try to, deduce, messages for lay practitioners. So what I've explained to you as lay practitioner is something implicitly Adisha, stated in his statements, and I'm trying to bring those clearly to you.
Ne gamba na ne chance gamba na ne chance ta gamba se at tong jang rung da I think pa yobatela da shina gamba se no se gamba na ne ta di tanda gamba se at manju yong jitin la ta gamba ste da tawa da ani gamba konan ding do gamba na ne chance den de mai ne jitin di shawa nyam batang nyam stock be doing at the debris shene and young again grandpa paying him mama his malipson.
And the next Adisha tells him that the first we need to probably deal with one Tibetan word called Kadampa, which could literally be translated as, it could mean two things. It could mean monastery, Kadampa, as we often Tibetans, use the word Kadampa to refer to monastery or nunnery. Or Kadampa also has a sense of being in a solitude. So it could, go both ways, I think. Anyway, so here Adisha says, do not call yourself a monk at a monastery or in a solitude if you are worried about the failures of worldly activities, like worldly people. So then do not call yourself a monk at a monastery or monk in a solitude.
That is not yike. That Radisha Mena, that Chimba Yina, Chimba Pomokandiki Yina. And Rang jitin di shawat nyam stone ni ta che ta pe kang chibi goni a ta te ye je yang ke chet sam ta ani yang nga cheba yin se malos kanang ge da cheb jung ke je yin ta cheb jung ke na yang ka ji yang ti pe che tan de yin sam sa de ye ten de chi ji ma ka na da teng ge de chi da ya.
So what is the message here for lay practitioners who are not monks and nuns? What is implicit in this is, I want to bring it out, is that, if you call yourself lay practitioners, but then you are, worried about the worldly success and worldly activities day in and day out, pretty much it's just like get stressed out, practically, thinking about how can I be successful in a worldly sense, how can I get this and that, the whole day and night passes worrying about and putting all the energies into that, and then still call oneself a practitioner. Don't say that.
So
basically, I think we all need to really think deeply and think carefully about what we do in everyday life.
Voilà, ta chi da ya. Chen Sem se ta rang sem tis. Si di sen de de balan di ba se ta zu de ra so de ke de pe ye je la de pe yen tin le ani cha ni se ta de ba tang cha ni cha ba tang ne sen la so ba se yen la ani ne ba la so ne sim la so ne so da ne ya khon ro ta 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 yo ta ne sen la so ba ta ma ja ba shen ni se mi gi sem de chen de ma de shen ne and nga gelo go ba hi ma master.
And then the next Adisha addresses him. Do not call yourself a monk at monastery or in solitude if your mind is not separated from delusions such as attachment to the sensual pleasures of this life and harmful thought. So here, what Adisha is saying is that if his mind is attached to sensual pleasures, 5 of them, form, sound, smell, taste, touch. And if he harbors harmful intentions, etc., meaning or getting mad or angry with others easily and so forth, then do not call yourself a monk at monastery or in solitude.
Nebe sengi gena nebe semta control ta ngaje ta chado ta ada senala so tende da majo shene ane ngata chudunge nambe chudunge ji yin slab ju amarista.
So I want to bring out the implicit message here for lay practitioners. So that is, if one is very attached to sensual pleasures, and one thinks of harming others, holds harmful intention or thoughts to others, one is angry with others, one is jealous of others, one is very stingy and not helping others and so forth. If one's mind is so deluded and so, caught up with all these delusional things, then do not call oneself, I am a Tibetan Buddhist practitioner, or I'm a Buddhist practitioner.
No, Tibetan. Not only Tibetan Buddhist. All Buddhist practitioners, all general, don't call I am practitioners. This is not Tenzin.
No.
Honest. That I think Lavinda.
No, okay.
Honest. That not Galon Mama Chisla. Gamba na nature seta. Rani any ta Gamba na nature. We be retreat in Andra. And then Kata Gamba in the nations. Gite Patan Jepa Maponchis Jipa Mojita. The social Gamba ne Tende Gite Pata Dondi Shed Mapomba Shed. Dondi the Shed Maponchis. Kanta Henki Jupatedatan. Ane Dondi Mapoma Shed and to the Henki the Ne Patsamaze. Teme Tamtans style. Tam Mandavata, Chadam of the Neta. And Chimpe Tams, that Chimba the Tsosi, Tam the Tonja Tam the Tat, and the Mambo Yorvata. Do your shakings? I think I've done them by Himamas.
I think before I transfer this space, maybe just want to make sure that what Geshe explained before, where I used the term, don't call yourself in such case Tibetan Buddhist practitioner, and I also said that don't call yourself a Buddhist practitioner of any kind, and Geshe tried to bring that message clearly, because I said that being relevant to being you are a Tibetan Buddhist practitioner centered. So it applies to all. It doesn't have to be Tibetan Buddhist. If one considered a Buddhist practitioner, or for that matter, a spiritual practitioner, if one is so caught up with all the delusional thinking, harming others, being jealous, being stingy, and so obsessively attached to sensual pleasures, then do not call yourself a spiritual practitioner, period. The next one, Adisha tells him that do not call yourself a monk at monastery or in solitude if you are seeking companies of worldly people to hang out and to indulge in worldly gossiping about all kinds of deluded stuff, and to talk about like worldly matters, how to do business, and etc. Maybe in this etc. could be like how to arrange marriage and so forth. Then do not call yourself a monk at monastery or in solitude.
Radishon Sombrete Yina, that Chimbaltin, Lucinta, Jajidua. Chesantati, Carisana, Socio needed a referendum Debbie Nandra. Aneta Hana Idris Madene, Socio any non Dene Legat Gene, Debbie Yinayanta. Chimbada Hank, Reta Sosi, Nale, those Debbie in there. And Big Bay trouble them, Mindivishe, that Rundi Mapombache, bigger sang trouble your trouble tomo. Or Tenzin Dorjee the Pongo with the Mapombache. After that, Hank, the Digby trouble to the Hank, the Junius. Tenzin under that, Tangi, Jamie Tamtani, or not Sonja Tamtani, that Mantamanda and Naman Hasso, and Sheni. I need to see the pie. So the children to see the map Zevina. Tanga any children kitchens in that Malus gun.
So of course, Adisha really the message is really clear and direct to the monk practitioner Venerable Geshe Barba, but I try to bring some implicit message that could be relevant to lay practitioners. So that's my interpretation based upon Adisha's explicit message. So how does this apply to lay practitioners? Is that, as lay practitioners, maybe you are in a retreat setting, but what you're really all thinking about is seeking to be in the company of other lay people, and so that you can indulge in gossiping and talk about all kind of worldly stuff, and waste all the time just thinking about all those thoughts, being in a retreat, and then still don't call yourself a retreatant or a meditator somewhere in a retreat. Or you may not be in a retreat, but you are at home. But as practitioners, what you should be doing is that, pay more attention to your practice and try to bring positive changes within yourself. But instead of doing that, you just kind of seek worldly companies, and in the sort of a negative friends. You get influenced by negative friends, who are pretty much not interested in spiritual matters or positive things, and so you go into all delusional thinking and talk about, gossiping about everything under the blue sky, and talk about all kinds of, worldly issues and matters, and waste the time like that and still call yourself a spiritual practitioner. Don't do that.
Under the blue sky.
Yeah. No.
Under the blue sky. Yeah. Okay. Okay. That is Lavinda.
No.
That's right. I wonder. This is all. I Jimin. You were shaking. That the sweat, the little matam machine, when is in this is such a children. Sabardin, children, this is such a Maran Samalok, and Muzoyale, this is such a check the was. That the naked changes. Morning and to sit such a set characters round the children to sit in such a checkers.
So, one of the really messages we get underneath all of these things is, as spiritual practitioners, whether we are monks and nuns or lay practitioners, we should really understand the preciousness of the time and opportunity we have to be able to do our practice. There is no time to waste. Every moment is precious for us. Think the other way around. When you think in terms of money, everybody says time is money, because how much you get money out of the time you use. Well, in a spiritual sense, time is a great resource for us. We can't waste time, because every time is very precious for our spiritual progress and practice.
No, thank you. Yeah. Rang la porridge never tamut layam musicians. Ye any rang never tunju to shave in the musician. Musician. Yen ane paint over Tomayam shave manupa. That thing. Remember?
No.
Rang ye rang never tunju to shave the Alexander musician that control long that intelligent beta. Shivita music number 10. That rang yen by paint I did. That's game. And it's shame to Basheni. She manupa she takes shavina. I'm not going to buy him.
And then the next Adisha tells him, or advises him that, do not call yourself a bodhisattva monk if you cannot tolerate even a small harm brought upon you by others, and that you do not have even a bit of an ability to benefit or help others. Okay. So now the message here is very clear that when others harm us, should be able to tolerate it, should be able to, withstand that, and so need to be able to benefit and help others. But that's all what is in the Bodhisattva's, practice. If one is not even helping others a little bit, and get easily mad when someone says slightly something unpleasant, what do you mean, and just kind of jump right away, then do not call yourself a Bodhisattva monk.
Tate Tandere ta Rang and Tatangeta the Hutinderda Chimbayinata Shangi Samba Minata Shangi Samba Mita Chimba Maritandi Shangi Samba Minas and Lindo Chimba Samaipe and Anata Shangi Samba Minas and Rang Yin Ran and never trouble to Shabbat Missouri Compa and Rang Yin Papa Thomas Dumniba Tindina and in Nashangi Samba is Malavisum.
So the implicit message that I try to bring out based on what Adisha said in his explicit message for lay practitioners is that it's the same thing. Do not call yourself a Bodhisattva practitioner if you cannot withstand even a slightest harm brought to you by others and get easily upset and mad and angry, and not doing anything hardly to benefit and help others. So with such attitudes, do not claim oneself to be a Bodhisattva.
Never Thomas and Mazeba. Yen Rang Yen Pemba chooses and shape Minipa Minibala. And in my Tibetan children is Malak, starting as it should be this.
Another reading of this, that applies to everyone is that, we cannot tolerate even a little bit of, harm brought to us by others. And we really do not do anything much or even think about helping others, but then do not call ourselves a practitioner of Mahayana Buddhism. Don't call yourself a Mahayana practitioner.
So
these things are really important, as we can see.
You be losing that number of days, the Hakoti journey. Oh, Pomokarine, I think Shangi Sambare, and of the second daughter, Shangi Samba, you mean the Nini Hako to us. Shangi Samba, you take Kaniki Gugu Yami, and then Hako to us.
I think really, when we really, look into the messages here, it pretty much gives us the defining characteristics of, who is a Bodhisattva. That's important for us to know, because often, in our society, we end up saying, or other people end up saying, we hear it's like, if somebody is a little bit of kind, we say, oh, what a Bodhisattva you are, or he is, or she is, or they are, Well, just being a kind itself does not make one a Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva needs, more than that quality. One has to have, in the footnote, real bodhicitta. One should be able to, withstand any difficulties and, for others' sake. And one should be dedicated to help others, So it's not easy to be a Bodhisattva, just simply being a little bit of generous or kind.
Tati Yumadre. Kates, Kasi Seta, Jakasi, Kate, Teter Menas, Tatin Lavinas. And you think Pala Jincham of Meparis, Canada. When it was Chaljun and Chehuchi, Shangisam by Mimbala, that Shangisam by Yinsi and of that. And then Tendishil Lavina Tati, Radushoin and the Tab, Pamba, Tatum Jungle.
So, and if we do that, then it says here, Adisha says, that is a great lie to the world. Junchimbo. What does it mean, great lie? It's just like, it is making a false claim, even though one is not a bodhisattva, but one projects and claims to be a bodhisattva. That's a great lie, a great deception to the world.
Those in loving, and the Quran being Maru do chance that been loving yes. Go to grace. No. Yena Titu Tishin good Toba may be shamed the Debanana, Mutupos. Go to Maris Gandhi. He just shamed that them public concert and then Tenzin and then they go to Maris. Go quiet, my church, and they mean that you became a Sagaris.
And then Adisha goes on to say that, let us say that you get away making a false claim with worldly people. Somehow, you turn out to be very smart, and worldly people didn't know that, so they got deceived completely and said, oh, you are a great bodhisattva, or whatnot. But there are many reasons why you can't get away from spiritual points of view. Number one, you cannot cheat, transcendental beings who have unobstructed wisdom to see things as they are. So one might get away lying, a great lie, with worldly people, but one cannot get away, from the transcendental wisdom and transcendental beings.
Le Jundi Rang Geshen Metopos. Tai Dendage Tivina, Le Jundi Rang Sabi, Le Jundi the Rang Geshen Ranguris, Nibate. Cheta Geshen Rangway, Metopos, Tatel Karsegurete, the anything. Nami the Ralan Jungres, Nami Mabi Yungumari, Nami the Ralan Jungres Kananga.
Another reason that you cannot get away with such great lie to the world is because law of karma will follow you. You get what you do. So if one lies with a great negativity, that negative karma will bring its negative result, and there's no exception to that in the law of karma. Law of karma cannot be cheated. It cannot be vetoed. It cannot be modified in any sense. That law of karma brings the results accordingly. So therefore, you cannot get away with the law of karma.
That's somebody. Sundus, Kangza, Church Center Dembanala, Mutopos. That thing, he sent them that when Sanjay jumped in data. And this Satumba and Nibishan, but Zulani, the Ukotay Amaristat, there is no.
And moreover, there is no way to deceive and cheat, the great beings, such as, bodhisattvas on higher spiritual grounds, and enlightened beings of Buddhas. And how can one cheat their wisdom and insights? There's no way to do that.
That those in Dang ran Samaloke, the Church Turgu Yoris, Tuba Turjang Gan and Jigam, Church Tuba the character under is Tunda Sanyak Chedoris.
So what I want to say here is that, of course, we need to listen to teachings, we need to study Dharma in order to understand or learn about Dharma. But then that's not just the goal or stop there. Because the whole purpose of spiritual education, Dharma education, is to be able to learn and do the practice. So listening to teaching or study is for the sake of knowledge or understanding, and the purpose of getting knowledge or understanding is to be able to do the contemplation or thinking, and the contemplation and thinking, is important for one's meditational practice and to put things into practice.
동네 tangi 대화 tangi 덴바데 시 체도닝이 그래서 최년기 삼에 시에요 봤어.
So at the beginning of every teaching, we take a moment, to cultivate the altruistic motivation or bodhicitta motivation, which involves that I want to listen to Dharma in order to be able to accomplish complete enlightened state for the benefit of all sentient beings. And so we set forth a very powerful altruistic motivation to guide us.
간나요레스 신경단이 코비드 동에 들어와 셔발라 아니 코비드 동에 점수를 들어와 셔발라 퇴바다 아니 삼배 퇴성 검수제니 조들라 프로 담그레스간 퇴성 검비트즈는 릭담니 루킨 코비드를 들어와 스카난도
As great Tibetan master Manjushri Lama Tsongkhapa, who is also known as Venerable Geshe, has said, and Geshe quoted his spiritual poems, which basically said that if we wish to help carry sentient beings across the ocean of suffering, then we need to set up the boat of listening to teaching and contemplation. So by inviting all the sentient beings to boat, this ship of study and contemplation, we're able to, bring them to the other shore. So, in other words, study, contemplation, meditation, or listening, contemplation, and meditation are essential for one's spiritual advancement. I have some prayer requests for people. Lizzie Hart, is very seriously ill. I think she has a leukemia, and she's one of Geshe's students. So, and another is Soya, who has, I think, cancer, and another person by the name of Cecil passed away. So prayers have been requested for them.
다들 정말로 신경이다 난케이다 아니 다 신경 난케 매나야 신경 단계 아니 동의에 타르니 타입에 아니 타바 대위 아니 공팔 아니 쉬어 도바치다 신는데 아니 된데가 아니 말씀 잡고스.
So I would like to urge you to say your prayers, for their sake and for the sake of others, who have passed away or who are very sick or who have a lot of, miseries. So may they be able to overcome their miseries, and so may they find the path leading to liberation and enlightenment.
Tenzin Dorjee Dampa Kuse Chabe Dampa the Toji Inert the Maybe Hundred Yonda. And then Churching Joe Pomonji, Trinity Shawana is under Drupata. You didn't come that I hinder, maybe Sota the Henny, Tenzin Sota the Maybe 100 Yon.
Whatever merits we have accumulated together this morning, from my side giving you the teaching and from your side listening to the teaching, may our merit contribute to the flourishing of Dharma throughout the universe. May His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all other holy beings and masters live long and be successful in fulfilling their visions benefiting sentient beings. May spiritual communities throughout the world and spiritual practitioners from all traditions remain healthy, harmonious, and be successful in fulfilling their spiritual aspirations. May this and other world environments be free of all kinds of unwanted pains and problems, and beings find peace, happiness, prosperity, and spirituality. In short, we dedicate our collective merit, positive energy for all kind mother sentient beings to be free from the fears and dangers of two types of mental obscuration, and may we all reach complete enlightened state quickly.
Oh.